In the heart of Lumiso City, a place where the old and the new met in a beautiful dance, lived a young woman named Amanda. At 32, Amanda had worked hard to become one of the city's most admired architects. Her designs were known for their elegance, and people often said she had a magical touch for turning ideas into stunning buildings. But Amanda's life wasn't all about work. At home, waiting for her at the door every evening, was Simba, her 6-year-old German shepherd. Amanda had rescued Simba as a skinny, frightened puppy from the local shelter. Over the years, he had grown into a strong, protective dog with gentle eyes that seemed to understand everything. To Amanda, Simba wasn't just a pet. He was family. He had been with her through good days and bad days, through lonely nights and moments of celebration. When work drained her energy, Simba would curl up next to her, offering a quiet comfort that no words could provide. It was about a year ago that Amanda met Thomas. He was everything a woman could dream of, handsome, charming, and successful. Thomas introduced himself as an entrepreneur running a series of businesses in Lumiso City. He had the kind of smile that could light up a room and a confident way of speaking that made Amanda feel seen and understood. Their relationship blossomed quickly. Thomas showered Amanda with love and attention, sending flowers to her office, planning romantic dinners, and always reminding her how lucky he felt to have her in his life. For the first time in years, Amanda allowed herself to dream of love again. One evening, as Amanda sat in her cozy sitting room with Simba at her feet, Thomas took her hand. "I want to build a life with you," he said softly, looking into her eyes. "Will you marry me?" Amanda had hesitated for only a moment. The idea of sharing her life with someone who cared for her this much felt right. "Yes," she whispered, smiling through her tears. The days that followed were filled with excitement and plans. Family and friends were overjoyed. Thomas became a regular at Amanda's home, often spending evenings with her as they discussed wedding details. Simba, however, was not impressed. From the first day Thomas stepped into their home, Simba had been uneasy. When Thomas reached out to pet him, Simba growled softly and backed away. Amanda laughed nervously, brushing it off as Simba being moody. "It's okay, Simba," Thomas said, holding out his hand again. "We're going to be friends soon. You'll see." Simba's ears flattened, and he stayed at Amanda's side, watching Thomas with sharp eyes. Over time, Simba's behavior only got worse. He would bark loudly when Thomas entered the house, plant himself between Amanda and Thomas whenever they sat together, and growl whenever Thomas got too close. At night, Simba often stayed awake, pacing restlessly as if waiting for something bad to happen. "Your dog doesn't like me very much," Thomas joked one evening. "Maybe he's jealous. I'm stealing you from him." Amanda laughed, though she felt a small pang of guilt for how Simba had changed. She crouched down to scratch behind his ears. "Don't be silly, Simba. Thomas is part of our family now. You'll see." But as Amanda turned back to Thomas, Simba's eyes stayed fixed on the man. His body remained tense, and his quiet growl rumbled deep in his throat. One evening, after a long day at work, Amanda returned home to find Thomas already waiting for her in the living room. Simba stood at the doorway, his tail stiff, his eyes locked on Thomas. "Hey, babe," Thomas greeted with a smile, holding up a stack of papers. "I've been thinking. Now that we're getting married, we should plan for the future. I talked to an agent about a joint life insurance policy for us. It's nothing unusual. It's just in case something happens to either of us." Amanda blinked. "Life insurance? That seems serious. We aren't even married yet. It's a way of showing we trust each other." "I've already signed it," Thomas said, holding out a pen. "This is just part of building our life together." Simba barked suddenly, breaking the silence. Amanda jumped, startled, as Simba moved closer to her side, barking louder and louder at Thomas. "Simba, stop it," Amanda scolded. "What's wrong with you?" Thomas laughed uneasily, though his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Maybe he's trying to warn you about my bad handwriting." Amanda chuckled softly, still feeling uneasy. She glanced down at Simba, who had planted himself firmly in front of her, his barking now a low, steady growl. For a brief moment, Amanda hesitated, but looking at Thomas's reassuring smile, she shook off the strange feeling and signed the paper. Simba let out a low whine, his eyes filled with something Amanda couldn't quite place. The days leading up to the wedding were a blur of excitement in Lumiso City. The streets were alive with the hum of wedding preparations, vendors carrying large trays of jollof rice and pepper soup, florists arranging bright marigolds and lilies, and tailors finishing up the colorful Aso Ebi outfits for family and friends. Amanda's home buzzed with relatives and bridesmaids chattering endlessly about the big day. Everyone was happy, except for Simba. The usually calm and gentle German shepherd had changed. He watched the chaos of the house with quiet suspicion, his eyes darting toward Thomas whenever the man entered a room. Thomas was spending more time at Amanda's house as the wedding drew nearer. He seemed to enjoy playing the role of the helpful fiancé, checking in with caterers, joking with Amanda's brothers, and charming her aunts. Yet, whenever Thomas was near Amanda, Simba became unsettled. At first, Amanda brushed it off. "Simba, stop growling," she would say, her tone firm as she tried to push him back. But Simba refused to leave her side. He planted himself firmly between Amanda and Thomas, his ears flat, teeth slightly bared. One evening, Thomas reached out to put his arm around Amanda's shoulders as they sat on the couch, laughing about the wedding playlist. Simba leapt up immediately, barking furiously as if his life depended on it. "Simba!" Amanda shouted, jumping up to grab his collar. "What is wrong with you? You should be used to Thomas by now." Thomas chuckled awkwardly, stepping back and holding up his hands. "Whoa, boy, easy now. You're acting like I'm stealing your mom." Simba didn't back down. He stared at Thomas, his growl low and steady. "I don't know why he's acting like this," Amanda said apologetically, tugging Simba toward his bed. "He's never been aggressive before." Thomas smiled, though there was an edge to his voice. "Maybe you've spoiled him too much, Amanda. He's jealous of me. Dogs can get attached, you know." Amanda sighed, forcing a smile as she stroked Simba's head. "Maybe you're right." Amanda's days were packed with dress fittings, guest lists, and calls with vendors. In the evenings, she was too tired to notice much of what was happening around her. One night, Simba noticed Thomas sneaking out of the guest room. The man moved quietly, phone in hand, slipping toward the front porch. Simba crept toward the living room, his paws soundless against the floor, watching as Thomas disappeared outside. Simba growled softly to himself, his amber eyes fixed on the door. Night after night, Simba's restlessness grew. Each time Thomas left or whispered on his phone, Simba would watch carefully. He didn't understand the words, but he could sense something Amanda couldn't. A shadow hanging over the man she loved. The following morning, Amanda noticed Simba pacing the house, his movements restless and agitated. He kept stopping at the base of the stairs, staring toward the guest room where Thomas had spent the night. When Thomas finally came downstairs, Simba barked loudly, the sound sharp and angry. "Simba, stop!" Amanda snapped, pulling him back. "What's gotten into you lately?" Thomas chuckled, though he avoided Simba's eyes. "I told you, babe, he's jealous. Maybe we should start calling him Inspector Simba," he joked, glancing at the dog. Simba growled in response, his stance unwavering. Amanda frowned, feeling torn. "You've never acted like this before, Simba," she murmured under her breath, scratching his head softly. "It's like you're trying to tell me something." But as the days passed, Amanda's focus was drawn back to the wedding. Guests began arriving in droves, family members from across the country, friends from university days, and colleagues from work. The house was a whirlwind of laughter, excitement, and loud chatter. Amanda's relatives quickly grew fond of Thomas. He charmed them with his easy smile, warm compliments, and his willingness to lend a hand. Amanda's younger cousins giggled whenever Thomas joked with them, and her older aunts couldn't stop praising her good fortune. "Ah, Amanda, you are blessed, oh," one aunt said, patting her shoulder. "This man is a good one. See how he treats you like a queen." Amanda smiled and nodded, but at the back of her mind she still wondered about Simba's strange behavior. One afternoon, Amanda's cousin Chidi stopped by to drop off some wedding decorations. As he entered the house, Simba barked and rushed to the front door, his tail wagging. Chidi laughed, scratching Simba's head. "Good boy, you know me well," Chidi said, grinning. But when Thomas walked in a moment later, Simba's mood changed instantly. His fur bristled, his ears flattened, and his body went stiff as he growled low and long. "Ah, "What's wrong with Simba?" Chidi asked, frowning. "He doesn't like Thomas?" Amanda laughed nervously, shaking her head. "I don't know. He's been acting weird lately. Thomas says it's jealousy." Chidi glanced between Simba and Thomas. "Dogs don't just act like that for no reason. They're sharper than people give them credit for." Amanda waved it off with a forced smile. "You sound like you believe Simba can see the future." Chidi shrugged. "You never know, sis. Sometimes dogs sense what we don't." As the wedding day approached, Simba's behavior became more intense. He refused to leave Amanda alone, following her from room to room like a shadow. Whenever Thomas entered the house, Simba's growls grew louder. The morning of the wedding arrived with a golden glow spreading across Lumiso City. The streets were alive with the rhythm of traditional drums, the hum of excited chatter, and the bright, dazzling colors of guests arriving at the Grand Lumiso Event Center. The venue, one of the finest in the city, was a spectacle to behold, adorned with gold fabrics, strings of fairy lights, and fresh flowers that lined every corner. Tables were set with white linens. Amanda's heart swelled with nervous excitement as she watched the preparations from a small room in the event center. Outside, family and friends arrived in their colorful aso ebi, matching traditional attire of deep green and gold for the occasion. Everyone was smiling, laughing, and eager to witness the celebration of love. But even as she sat in front of the mirror, her makeup artist perfecting her final touches, Amanda couldn't shake the strange feeling deep in her chest. It was as though something unseen was pulling at her, like a shadow she couldn't name. In the corner of the dressing room sat Simba, his tail still, his amber eyes watching Amanda closely. Amanda had insisted on including Simba in the wedding, dressing him in a small black bow tie that matched the groomsmen. "Come on, Simba," she whispered softly, crouching to his level. "Today is a happy day. Can you try to behave for me, please?" Simba whined low in his throat, his ears flattened against his head. Amanda smiled as she scratched behind his ears, but she couldn't help noticing how tense he felt beneath her hands. "You'll see," she said quietly, trying to convince herself as much as Simba. "It'll all be fine." The guests had all gathered under the high ceilings of the decorated hall. Traditional drummers played softly as the wedding procession began. Groomsmen and bridesmaids walked arm in arm down the long, flower-lined aisle. Thomas stood tall at the altar, his crisp, white Agbara robe perfectly tailored, his face the picture of calm confidence. When the music changed, signaling the bride's entrance, a hush fell over the room. The guests turned expectantly toward the large wooden doors. The double doors swung open, and there stood Amanda, breathtaking in her ivory gown. Beaded details shimmered with every step as she began to walk down the aisle, her face radiant beneath a delicate veil. The crowd let out a collective sigh of awe, and some began murmuring, "She's beautiful." But Simba, who had been sitting with Amanda's cousin Chidi near the front row, suddenly sprang to attention. His body tensed, his ears shot up, and his gaze locked on Thomas. The music swelled as Amanda took a step forward, but Simba had seen enough. With a sharp bark that rang through the hall, Simba jerked free from the leash Chidi held, bolting down the aisle. The guests gasped in shock as the large German shepherd sprinted straight toward Amanda, his bow tie bouncing with every stride. "Simba!" Amanda cried, stopping mid-step. Her hands flew to her chest as the dog skidded to a halt in front of her, barking furiously and blocking her path. The officiant paused, bewildered, as the murmurs of confusion rose from the guests. "Is that a dog?" someone whispered loudly. "Why is it barking like that?" Simba's growls echoed through the hall as he turned toward Thomas at the altar, his body positioned defensively in front of Amanda. He barked and growled relentlessly, his gaze fixed on Thomas like he was staring down a predator. "Simba, stop this!" Amanda shouted. She crouched down, trying to pull him back. "What's wrong with you?" But Simba wouldn't move. His muscles were rigid, his growls growing deeper and louder, making the air in the hall feel heavier. "Get that dog out of here!" Thomas shouted, his voice sharper than anyone had ever heard. Simba ignored him. Instead, he lunged toward a leather satchel Thomas had left by the altar, biting the strap and pulling it down to the floor. The bag tipped over, and papers spilled out, scattering across the aisle. A hush fell over the crowd. Amanda froze, her eyes darting from Simba to the documents that lay across the white carpet. For a moment, no one moved. "What's this?" Chidi said loudly as he rushed forward, crouching to grab one of the papers. His face paled as he scanned the page. "Amanda, look at this." Amanda's breath hitched as she stood rooted to the spot. Chidi handed her one of the papers, his hand trembling slightly. It was an insurance document with her name listed in bold black letters. Her heart dropped. "What is this?" she whispered. Chidi bent to pick up another page. "It's a life insurance policy, a massive one. Thomas's name is here as the only beneficiary." Gasps rippled through the hall as Amanda's mind began to spin. She turned slowly toward Thomas, her voice shaking. "Thomas, what is this?" Thomas's face had gone pale. His smile was gone, replaced with a look of frustration and anger. He stepped forward quickly, reaching for the papers. "This is nothing. It's just nothing." Chidi cut him off, waving the document. "This is an insurance policy that pays you millions if anything happens to Amanda." The whispers from the guests grew louder. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging worried glances. Amanda stared at Thomas, the weight of everything crashing down on her. She looked at the papers, at the unease in Simba's eyes, and at the man she thought she loved. A memory flashed through her mind, Simba growling every time Thomas was near, his strange behavior over the last few weeks. Her voice trembled as she asked, "Thomas, what were you planning to do to me?" Simba stood in front of Amanda, his body still, his eyes locked on Thomas. It was as though he knew the answer before anyone else did, as Thomas opened his mouth to speak but no words came. Amanda took a step back, tears brimming in her eyes. "I trusted you." Thomas's face twisted with anger as he pointed at Simba. "This stupid dog ruined everything." The hall erupted into chaos. Guests jumped to their feet, shouting in confusion. Amanda's brothers rushed toward her, shielding her from Thomas as he took a step forward. Simba growled louder, his teeth bared, ready to defend Amanda at all costs. "Someone call the police!" Chidi shouted, holding up the papers for everyone to see. "This man is a fraud!" The once celebratory atmosphere of the Lumiso Event Center had turned heavy with tension. The vibrant drumming had stopped. The cheerful chatter had been replaced with low murmurs and gasps as guests stared at the scattered papers on the aisle floor. Amanda stood frozen, clutching the life insurance document Chidi had handed her. Her hands trembled as she reread it, her mind refusing to believe what her eyes were seeing. Beneficiary, Thomas Adeyemi. Policy value, 200 million, payable upon death of Amanda Eze. Amanda's breath came in short, sharp gasps as her gaze shot up toward Thomas. He stood near the altar, his face pale, eyes darting from Amanda to the crowd. The charming mask he had worn so well was beginning to crack, revealing something colder beneath. "Thomas," Amanda's voice wavered, but there was steel beneath the fear. "What is this?" Thomas forced a smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Amanda, please. This is all a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Amanda shot back, stepping forward with the document raised. "This is not the policy I signed. This says sole beneficiary. How do you explain that?" The guests erupted into a low roar of confusion. Some people stood up, shaking their heads in disbelief. Amanda's brothers moved closer to her, their faces dark with anger. Simba remained at Amanda's side, growling low and deep, his protective stance unwavering. "Thomas, answer me!" Amanda shouted, her voice rising with a mix of pain and fury. Tears filled her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Thomas's eyes narrowed, his frustration beginning to show. "Amanda, I told you, it's not what it looks like. These are private papers you shouldn't even be reading." "Private papers?" Amanda's voice cracked. "You convinced me to sign a different policy. You said it was for both of us. But this says that if I die, you get everything. Everything, Thomas. It doesn't say anything about your death." The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. People began to whisper and point. "What's happening? Did he plan to kill her?" Amanda's cousin Chidi, who had been crouched down scanning the rest of the scattered documents, stood up suddenly. "Amanda, wait. There's more." "What do you mean?" Amanda asked, her voice hoarse. Chidi glanced at her and then at Thomas, his face grave. I need to see his phone. What? Thomas snapped, his voice sharp. You have no right. Oh, I have every right, Chidi cut in, stepping toward Thomas. You tried to kill my cousin. Let's see what you've been hiding. Chidi turned to Amanda. Amanda, I can't explain right now. Trust me on this. Amanda swallowed hard and nodded. Give him your phone, Thomas. No, Thomas said flatly, clutching his pocket. This has gone far enough. But before Thomas could react, one of Amanda's brothers, Emmanuel, stepped forward and grabbed Thomas's arm. You heard her. Give him the phone. Thomas struggled, his face twisted with anger, but Emmanuel's grip was firm. The crowd gasped as Thomas's phone was yanked from his pocket and handed to Chidi. Chidi's fingers moved swiftly across the screen, unlocking it in seconds. Amanda stared at him, shocked. How do you… Tech genius, remember? Chidi muttered, his eyes glued to the phone as he navigated through Thomas's messages. The hall was so silent you could hear a pin drop. Everyone watched as Chidi's face darkened with each scroll. Chidi's voice was low and angry when he finally spoke. You're a monster, Thomas. He turned the phone screen outward, displaying a series of messages. The screen glowed brightly as the guests strained to read the damning words. Thomas, once the wedding's done, we'll take care of her. Make it look like an accident. No loose ends this time. Mark, are you sure? She seems sharp. The dog is starting to notice things. Thomas, she trusts me completely. The policy is locked in. After the accident, we disappear. Gasps erupted across the room. Amanda stumbled backward, her knees weak. You plan to kill me, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Tears streamed down her cheeks as the weight of the betrayal sank in. Wait. Thomas tried to speak, but his voice was drowned out by the shouts of the guests. You devil! Someone yelled. Lock him up! Cried another voice. Thomas's calm exterior shattered completely. His eyes darted toward the exit, calculating his escape. You don't understand! He shouted desperately. It wasn't supposed to be like this! Chidi's voice rose above the chaos. This man is a fraud! He's been doing this for years, marrying wealthy women, earning their trust, and then killing them for their money. I recognize his name from an old case I worked on, and he has been covering his tracks well, which is why he hasn't been caught ever since. Amanda's eyes widened as she turned to Chidi. What? Chidi nodded grimly. I work with tech investigators sometimes. Thomas, if that's even his real name, has scammed women in other towns. He's always the charming, perfect man. He builds a relationship, plans a tragic accident, cashes out the life insurance, and disappears. That's his pattern. Lies! Thomas shouted, but his voice was drowned out by the growing outrage in the crowd. Amanda's heart shattered as she stared at the man she thought she knew. Who are you? She whispered. Thomas didn't answer. Instead, his eyes darted to the exit one last time. He turned sharply and bolted toward the door, shoving guests out of his way. Simba sprang into action before anyone could move. The German shepherd lunged forward, teeth bared, and barked so fiercely that Thomas froze in his tracks. Simba's growl was low and menacing as he blocked the exit, his stance strong and unrelenting. Call the police! Chidi shouted. Several guests rushed to the door as Thomas turned, defeated, to face the furious crowd. Amanda watched through tear-filled eyes as her brothers and a few other men grabbed him, holding him back until the police arrived. Simba returned to Amanda's side, nuzzling her hand softly as if to say, I told you. Amanda dropped to her knees beside him, wrapping her arms around his strong neck. You saved me, she whispered through her sobs. You saved me, Simba. By the time the police arrived, the once beautiful wedding venue had turned into a scene of chaos. Guests lingered outside, whispering in shock as Thomas was handcuffed and led away. Amanda sat quietly in the dressing room, surrounded by her family. Her makeup was smudged, her gown wrinkled, but none of it mattered. Chidi sat beside her, holding her hand. Amanda, I'm so sorry. I should have checked him out sooner. Amanda shook her head. This isn't your fault. I ignored the signs. Simba tried to warn me. I should have listened to him. Simba lay at her feet, his head resting on her shoes. Amanda looked down at him, her heart full of gratitude and love. Simba knew, she said softly. he knew all along. The days after the disastrous wedding were quiet, heavy, and filled with an emptiness Amanda hadn't expected. Her once bustling house, filled with the sounds of laughter, music, and preparations, now felt eerily still. The flowers, so carefully arranged for the ceremony, had begun to wilt, their once vibrant petals curling inward. Amanda sat in the living room, wearing a simple dress, a cup of untouched tea on the table beside her. Simba lay at her feet, his warm body pressed against her legs. Every now and then he looked up at her with those gentle amber eyes, as if to say, "I'm here." Amanda reached down and ran her fingers through Simba's thick fur. "You saved my life, didn't you, boy?" she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Simba let out a soft whine and nuzzled her hand. The betrayal weighed heavily on Amanda's heart. The man she had trusted, the man she was ready to spend her life with, had planned to kill her. The thought made her stomach churn. She thought back to all the little signs she'd missed. Simba's growls, Thomas's late-night calls, the tension in the air whenever he was around. How could I not have seen it? She murmured to herself. Her cousin Chidi, who had become her pillar of strength over the past few days, sat across from her, watching carefully. "Amanda, it's not your fault," he said firmly. "People like Thomas, they know how to hide their true selves. They're master manipulators." Amanda looked up, tears welling in her eyes. Simba knew. He tried to tell me so many times, but I ignored him. I thought he was being silly or jealous. I should have listened. "You did listen," Chidi replied softly. "Maybe not at first, but you did when it mattered most, and that's what saved you." Amanda looked down at Simba and smiled faintly, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I owe him everything." The days turned into weeks, and slowly Amanda began to heal. Her family and friends surrounded her with love and care, ensuring she was never alone. They brought food, stayed the night, and kept her distracted with stories and laughter. Through it all, Simba never left her side. At night, when Amanda's thoughts became too much to bear, Simba would curl up beside her bed, his steady breathing a source of comfort. On long, quiet afternoons, they took walks through Lumiso City. Amanda would hold his leash loosely, allowing him to guide her as if he knew exactly where she needed to go. The fresh air and Simba's quiet presence began to soothe her. One evening, as they sat on a bench overlooking the city, Amanda reflected on everything that had happened. She gently scratched behind Simba's ears. "You're smarter than all of us, you know that?" she said with a small smile. "I'll never doubt you again." She sighed, looking out at the golden horizon. "Maybe that's the biggest lesson. I need to trust myself more. My instincts, just like you did. You saw through him when I didn't. I won't let that happen again." Simba gave a soft bark as if agreeing, and Amanda chuckled softly. Word of Simba's heroic actions spread like wildfire through Lumiso City. At first, it was just whispers. Rumors exchanged in the bustling markets and across office desks. People spoke of a loyal dog who had stopped a wedding to save his owner from a deadly betrayal. Soon the story began to grow. Newspapers picked it up, and headlines appeared across the city. "Hero dog saves bride from deadly plot." Simba, the brave German shepherd who stood against evil. People were fascinated. Vendors in the market began using Simba's name to describe loyalty and bravery. "Be like Simba," they'd say with a laugh. Children pointed excitedly when they saw Amanda and Simba walking by, shouting, "It's Simba, the hero dog!" Amanda found it both heartwarming and surreal. Strangers would stop her in the street, eager to see Simba up close. Some would kneel and pet him reverently, whispering, "Good boy, you're a brave boy." One morning, Amanda woke up to find a group of reporters waiting outside her gate. They held cameras and microphones, eager to hear her story. "Amanda, can we meet Simba?" one journalist asked as she opened the door cautiously. Amanda smiled politely and shook her head. "Simba doesn't care for fame," she said, glancing back at her loyal dog, who stood protectively behind her. "He's just my best friend." The journalists didn't press further. Instead, they marveled at Simba from a distance, snapping pictures as he trotted back inside the house. Over time, Simba became a local legend. People saw him not just as a dog, but as a loyal protector, a friend who could see danger when no one else could. Amanda's neighbors began bringing their dogs to her, joking that they wanted Simba to train them. Simba the wise one, they'd tease, laughing. Amanda began to notice something else, too. She wasn't the only one inspired by Simba's actions. Friends who had doubted their own instincts began trusting themselves more. Women in her circles started being more careful about the people they let into their lives. One afternoon, as Amanda sat in her garden with Simba by her side, her friend Ifeoma stopped by. "I don't know how you do it," Ifeoma said with admiration, looking at Simba. "You've been through so much, and yet you're still here, stronger than ever." Amanda looked at Simba, his ears perked up as he watched a butterfly flit past. "I'm still here because of him," she replied softly. "He reminds me that sometimes we already know the truth. We just have to trust ourselves enough to see it." Simba turned his head toward Amanda, and for a moment, it felt like he understood every word she said. Amanda knew her life would never be the same after Thomas's betrayal, but she also knew she wouldn't let it define her. She focused on her work, pouring her energy into new architectural projects that brought her joy. Through it all, Simba stayed by her side, a constant source of strength. On quiet evenings, Amanda would sit on the porch with Simba, watching the sunset over Lumiso City. She no longer felt the weight of betrayal as heavily as before. In its place was gratitude, a deep, overwhelming gratitude for the dog who had saved her life. The months that followed were kinder to Amanda. Time, as they say, has a way of softening even the sharpest wounds. Slowly but surely, the weight of betrayal began to fade, replaced by gratitude for the life she still had, and the loyal companion who had saved it. Simba was as steady as ever, always by her side, watching over her like the guardian he was. Amanda had fallen into a new rhythm of life. She poured her energy into work, spending long hours designing beautiful structures that brought joy to Lumiso City. But at the end of every day, it was Simba who brought her the most comfort. One morning, Amanda noticed that Simba seemed a little off. He wasn't his usual energetic self, and he had refused breakfast. Concerned, she decided it was time for a checkup. "Come on, big guy," Amanda said gently, clipping on Simba's leash. "Let's go see the doctor." Simba, ever obedient, followed her to the car, though his tail wagged a little slower than usual. Amanda drove to Lumiso Veterinary Clinic, a cozy little place just outside the city center. She'd heard good things about the clinic from friends, but had never been before. As she walked in with Simba trotting beside her, a warm voice greeted her. "Good morning. How can we help you today?" Amanda looked up and found herself staring into the kindest pair of eyes she had seen in a long time. The man standing in front of her wore a white coat, a soft smile spreading across his face. "I'm Dr. Eric," he introduced himself. He crouched to Simba's level, offering his hand for the dog to sniff. To Amanda's surprise, Simba wagged his tail and licked Eric's hand gently, something he rarely did with strangers. Amanda let out a relieved chuckle. That's a good sign. He usually doesn't warm up to people so quickly. Eric looked up at her, his smile growing. Dogs know good people when they see them. Amanda blushed faintly, smiling back. Well, Simba hasn't been feeling like himself lately. He's been low on energy, and he skipped breakfast this morning. "Let's take a look," Eric said, guiding them into the examination room. As Eric examined Simba, Amanda couldn't help but notice his gentle demeanor. He spoke to Simba softly, running his hands along the dog's body with a careful, practiced touch. Simba stayed calm the entire time, even wagging his tail slightly as Eric scratched behind his ears. "He looks healthy overall," Eric said, standing up and smiling at Amanda. "It might just be a mild stomach bug, but I'll give him something to settle his digestion. Make sure he rests for a day or two." Amanda let out a sigh of relief. "Thank you so much, Dr. Eric." "Please, just call me Eric," he replied with a grin. "Simba's lucky to have such a caring owner." Amanda looked down at Simba, who was now sitting happily at her feet. "I think I'm the lucky one." As they left the clinic, Eric walked them to the door. "Bring him back if he doesn't improve, but I think he'll be just fine," he said warmly. "It was lovely meeting you both." Amanda smiled, feeling a little lighter than she had in months. "You too, Eric. Thanks again." As she drove home, Amanda couldn't stop thinking about Eric, his kind voice, his warm smile, and the way Simba had taken to him so quickly. A week later, Amanda found herself back at the clinic, not because Simba was sick, but because something inside her had nudged her to return. Just a checkup, she told herself, though she knew there was more to it. Eric greeted her with the same bright smile, his eyes lighting up when he saw her. "Simba, it's good to see you again." Amanda smiled shyly. "He's back to his usual self, but I thought I'd bring him in just to be sure." Eric chuckled, crouching to pet Simba. "Well, it's always good to see my favorite patient." From that day on, Amanda and Eric saw more of each other. At first it was little things, bumping into each other at the grocery store, chatting when Amanda brought Simba for routine visits. Over time, those meetings turned into shared lunches, long walks in the park with Simba, and late-night phone calls filled with laughter. Eric was patient and kind, never pushing Amanda to move faster than she was ready. He understood that her heart was still healing and made it clear that he would be there, however long it took. Simba, of course, approved completely. He greeted Eric with wagging tails and happy barks every time he saw him, as if he knew this man was good for Amanda. One evening, as Amanda and Eric sat on her porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Amanda reflected on everything that had led her here. Simba lay at her feet, chewing on a bone contentedly. "You know," Amanda began softly, "I used to think I could handle everything on my own. I thought being strong meant ignoring my instincts and brushing off my fears." Eric looked at her, listening intently. She smiled faintly, running her fingers through Simba's fur. "But Simba, he taught me otherwise. He showed me that sometimes we already know the truth. We just have to trust ourselves enough to listen." Eric nodded, reaching out to squeeze her hand gently. "Simba's more than just a dog, isn't he? He's a guardian." Amanda smiled, tears brimming in her eyes. "He saved me, literally, and in ways I can't even explain." She looked down at Simba, her heart full. "I'll never ignore him again." Simba looked up at her then, his tail thumping softly against the floor. It was as if he understood every word she had said. From that day on, Amanda vowed to trust her instincts, the way Simba had trusted his. She carried the lessons he had taught her everywhere she went. Lessons about love, loyalty, and the quiet wisdom of those who stand by us no matter what. Simba became more than just a hero to the people of Lumiso City. He became Amanda's constant reminder that trust is earned, not given blindly. As her relationship with Eric blossomed, Amanda felt hopeful for the future, one she knew she would face with open eyes, a strong heart, and her loyal companion by her side.